The Indiana Hoosiers fell 77 to 57 to the defending national champions UConn in the first game of the Empire Classic. I'm here with Kyler Staley. We just watched the game. I mean, it was not the best performance from the Hoosiers, and rebounding was a struggle once again. What did you see?
Yeah, I mean, it's just an overall sloppy game from Indiana. I think the inexperience and just the bright lights of Madison Square Garden really affected them a little bit. I did like their fight. I did like their competitiveness. I know the final score doesn't really reflect that, but I would say Indiana was pretty competitive throughout the entire game. Until about the last 5-7 minutes or so, when the killer instinct of UConn just kind of took over at that point. And UConn's a more obviously more well balanced team. They've got older guys that they've got guys that fit their system right now. But Indiana is still a work in progress and just has a lot to work on. Obviously, not having Xavier Johnson for the first 18 minutes, or yeah, for the first 18 minutes of the game. That was a big blow for them. Again, you saw a little bit of struggles, even though it looked a little bit better. You saw a little bit of struggles again with, Indiana closing out on threes and everything. But the offense, just really sloppy at times. Came up with some very empty possessions. Had a lot of turnovers. I think they ended up with 12 total turnovers, which UConn scored 16 points off of. So obviously, that's never going to be good when you're going up against a team like UConn. But Malik Renew, Khalil Ware, those guys showed up and played for the most part. Malik picked up that fifth foul, and then after that, Indiana was just kind of done with at that point in time. So just could never really get in a rhythm. Anytime they would try to strike at UConn, they would get the lead down to about 7. UConn would go on a run, or a whistle would happen. It would just take the momentum out of that. But you saw flashes of what this Indiana team can be moving forward, positive flashes, I'd say. But they got a much needed wake up call here with that. So you saw them barely getting beat, or you saw them barely beating teams that they were supposed to beat by double digits plus, and then they run into the defending national champions. Um, that's just not gonna, that's never gonna be a formula of success right there. But next or tomorrow they'll likely play Louisville, depending on the Louisville Texas outcome. So they have a chance to bounce back rather quickly. But a much needed wake up call for this Indiana team.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. Malik Renew, I guess, the lone bright spot for the Hoosiers. He fouled out, but in 27 minutes, 18 points, 3 rebounds, 3 blocks, and a steal. Was really the only consistent offensive guy that Indiana could go to.
Yeah, for sure. He showed a lot of fight. And he made plays happen. Out of the post and everything. Saw a couple of good drives from the elbow that he would take advantage of. But it's just those ticky tack fouls that would come at him. It just really was killer for them. And like I said, when he fouled out, Indiana's the air out of their balloon just kind of went out. They ran out of gas at that point. Their main guy that they were kind of leaning on or whatever. And then Khalil Ware, unfortunately, didn't really show up in the second half all that much. They didn't really get him involved like he was the first half. So, um, but it's just one of those things where we've talked about it, where we always said Malik, he's got to stay on the floor for Indiana to have success. Not saying the outcome would have been different by any means, but I think the final score would have been a lot closer with Malik if he was able to kind of ride that out and was on the floor and fighting. So obviously he was very, very frustrated at the end. A lot of times you can see on the camera angles he was not very happy with himself or whatever. But he has a chance to bounce back tomorrow, to kind of clean up those mistakes that he had. So just a tough break overall for Indiana. They just could never figure out a lineup that would work. And then of course Mackenzie and Baco lays another egg. And it's starting to get really, really frustrating if you're an Indiana fan, because he's not really producing like you would think he would. It's just I don't want to use this word, but I think I have to at this point. He's becoming sort of a liability on the floor with them. So, and then of course CJ Gunn, I will say some positive things about him. He came in and he played really, really hard. Obviously, he missed some shots, he missed some open shots, but for a guy like CJ, he's just got to keep shooting. He's got to keep shooting those shots. Those will go in eventually. So, and he was positive on the defensive end as well, I would say. So, Gabe Cupps, Trey Galloway, those guys, really weren't there for Indiana. Just the backcourt in general, overall as a unit, they just weren't there when Indiana really needed them to be. So, just a lot going on with this team or whatever. But going up against UConn, you almost have to play perfect And of course, Indiana has not played perfect whatsoever to start the season. So there was really no hope at that. This is a tough blow for Indiana overall.
Yeah, you mentioned CJ Gunn, 4 steals for him. Do you, with the I guess the Mackenzie McBaco struggles, do you think there's a chance that Indiana might go away from McBaco in the starting lineup, maybe start CJ Gunn at the 3, or move the lineup up a little bit with Gabe Cups in there?
It's I don't think so, and I think that's just kind of the way Mike Woodson. There was always that talk of his first 2 years where they needed to, fans would complain, they need to change up the starting lineup, whatever. And Mike Woodson wouldn't. He would never do that. So I don't know at this point in time if it gets to about, I would say, the middle of December and it's still not working and things aren't clicking. I think then you look at possibly making a change to the lineup depending on how the second unit players are playing. If CJ Gunn and CJ Gunn and Gabe Cupps continue to kind of show positive things or whatever, maybe you make that lineup switch. But just going to Mbako, I mean, it's just silly things. It's just undisciplined things that are really just hurting him right now. I mean, he got backdoored quite a bit. He's playing way too vertical at times on the defensive end. And it's just times where, if he gets caught up in a pick and roll situation, if he gets caught up in that screen, he just quits on the play, and it's just effort things like that. So he's got a lot to figure out in this college game, and he is not adjusting very well, as Mike Woodson would hope right now. But as far as a lineup change right now, I don't see that happening. I think Mike Woodson's going to hopefully try to get him to play through all these struggles and just for him to just finally click. So I think they'll move with the same starting unit that they have.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, there's not much more to say. We'll have another recap tomorrow. As always, for all things IU athletics, HoosierIllustrated.com is your source. Indiana_FRN on Twitter, Facebook. Make sure you're subscribing to our YouTube and Spotify. And as always, thanks for listening.